Okay, Frank Bernardo here for Low Kick MMA. Joining me today is Patrick Post, one of the writers on the team, and we're going to be breaking down, previewing, and sort of throwing out some of our best bets or best betting advice, if you can call it that, from the upcoming UFC Paris event that takes place this weekend. How's it going, mate? Good to have you on.
Yeah, it's good to be here. I'm doing well. It's nice to have a card this week. We had what was it, a run of 12 weeks of UFC over the summer. And the 1 week I felt like the longest week of my life. So it's nice to be back.
Yeah, it was good. But I mean, we had stuff like one and even some influencer boxing last week that sort of filled the void of violence that we missed out. But yeah, back with a bang this weekend. And it's a card that's on European time as well, which is very good for us over in this neck of the woods.
For sure makes a change that, kind of you get to a point like being an MMA fan where it gets to you watch a main event like Leon Edwards, Kamaru Usman. I'm screaming the house down at like 6 o'clock in the morning. My family don't appreciate that, that's for sure.
Yeah, exactly the same here. But it was worth it. Yeah. It's just almost a shame we didn't start this last week or 2 weeks ago now for that fight. But we're here now. And yeah, let's just get stuck into this card. At the very top of the card, the headlining fight, we have Ciryl Gane, the former interim title fighter, France's own, obviously, sitting at the very top of the card. And he's taking on, a real fan favorite in Tai Tuivasa. Almost polar opposite fighters. If you look at them, Gane is this, tricky, if you can call a heavyweight a point fighter, Ciryl Gane would be that guy. And then you've just got a pure brawler in Tai Tuivasa. So yeah, what's your initial read on this one, mate?
I mean, like most people, I'm a big Tai Tuivasa fan. His style, his personality outside of the cage. You just love him. I love the way he is. That said, I do not see a route for a victory in him in this fight unless he hits some spectacular KO, which we've seen him do. Don't get me wrong. I just think Ciryl Gane, technically, he's much better in every aspect of MMA. Like you referred to, he's probably one of the only heavyweight fighters on the roster. But I feel like he's just going to be too much for Tai this time round. And it feels, first card in France, Paris, it feels like it's almost set up for him to deliver.
Yeah, 100%. Gane currently sitting at a minus 550 favorite, so that's sort of the bookies reflect what you're saying. If you are going to go sort of back Tai Tuivasa in this fight, just take the KO prop, isn't it? I don't think there's any point of he's not going to be winning decision. He's not going to be submitting Gane, is he? It's the big hit or bust for Tai Tuivasa. Yeah, not really a line I'm going to be chasing at all. I haven't really got too much on Gane either because it's a weird one with him. I see, like, how can you predict an outcome in this fight? Like, I feel no more confident saying that Gane will go out there and pick up a decision win over Tuivasa, and I say than him actually knocking him out because Tuivasa, I feel like he's not built for 5 rounds. If he gets past the maybe 3.5 sort of rounds, he's probably going to start to gas, and that's when Gane typically picks up his KO finishes. So I haven't got enough confidence to properly back Gane from a betting perspective, but I do see him picking up a win this one.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think I've looked more of it as, this is a real chance for him to. I mean, he has a big following already, but to get the whole of his nation behind him in a sense. I agree with you. Tai is not making it well. He's not fit for 5 rounds. If I were going to lay anything, I would probably maybe lay a small sprinkle on, Ciryl Gane 3, 4, 5 if that's an option, or
the old betting
like
lines.
that inside the distance, something like that. But if it's going to be a finish, it's coming late. That's for sure.
Yeah, I think I might have him in a small parlay, but I just find it too hard to, just because he does prefer almost seems like he prefers to go to decision, but then Tai doesn't. So it's a weird sort of conflict of fighting styles, but a great fight nonetheless. And I mean, I would love to see Tai Tuivasa win, in all honesty, but just because the potential of having Francis Ngannou versus Tai Tuivasa is a tantalizing prospect. But you know, if I think Garner's probably has a fighting style that is lends itself to longevity more. So I feel like he could be a good champion and defend the title multiple times. And you know, to go see him get a win out in front of a French crowd would be nothing short of sensational. Let's take a look at the co-main event. Another former champion, Robert Whittaker. In my opinion, the sort of the clear number 2 of the UFC's middleweight division, taking on Marvin Vettori, former title challenger. He's fought Israel Adesanya twice, both to very competitive decisions. Well, the first one was very competitive. We've got Whittaker at a -220 right now. I'm seeing Vettori coming back at +180. Have you got a side in this one?
I do, and you took the words out of my mouth. To be honest, Robert Whittaker is behind Israel Adesanya. He is the best middleweight going. I suppose maybe we could talk about Alex Pereira in a few weeks, depending on how that fight goes. But for now,
yeah. What's he showing?
Yeah, I think, you know, I think he's the better fighter than Vettori. Vettori's going to look to close the distance and really pressure him. If Rob can stay on the end of his striking, you know, his kicks, his punches, I could see him cruising to a decision victory. To be honest, I didn't want to take Rob Whittaker money line, although I think I might have it in a parlay. That being said, so I took Robert Whittaker by decision.
Yep, we're exactly on the same boat in that one. I think that might be my heaviest play on the whole card is Robert Whittaker by decision. I mean, Marvin Vettori is one of, if not the most durable fighters in the entire UFC. Some of the shots he was taking from Paulo Costa in that last fight was just absolutely ridiculous. Taking head kicks like nothing, like not even like being stunned, just walks through him. And we've seen Paulo Costa drop Yoel Romero with a head kick before, and Marvin Vettori just took it, carried on walking, and went on to win that fight. That being said, I think Robert Whittaker is a superior fighter in essentially every aspect of the game. Maybe Vettori has a sort of strength advantage to an extent. Is very much of a sort of muscle-bound fighter, but I think striking, Whittaker has the advantage. He's got that sort of karate-based background. And you know, we were saying point fighting with Ciryl Gane before. Whittaker does have that aspect inserted into his game, I suppose you say. He also has KO potential as well, but I don't think he's going to knock out Vettori. So I think he can easily pick up rounds in this fight. And then also he's got a wrestling background. He's got a wrestling pedigree that I think he could lean on if he has to as well. So yeah, I just think he wins every single round, but isn't able to get Marvin Vettori out there.
No, I completely agree. And again, you know, making reference to the Paulo Costa head kick, if you can take one of them and survive, you are tough. You are seriously tough. You know, I think Vettori might try and wrestle, but like you say, Rob's takedown defense is very good. Was it the? You'll have to jump in on this. Get it wrong. It might have been the second Yoel Romero fight where he tore his MCL. He defended, you know, a majority of the takedowns that Yoel shot for. If he can do that on, you know, essentially a damaged or one leg, I'm pretty confident a fully fit Robert Whittaker will be able to stuff Marvin Vettori's takedowns, keep him behind his strikes, and like we say, cruise to a decision.
100%. And we've also seen, further like back up your point, in terms of like takedown decision making regarding takedowns with Vettori, there's a lot to be wanted from him. You remember back in the Adesanya fight, repeatedly shooting for double legs against the cage and just not getting anything. He's not transitioning to a single leg. He's just pushing Adesanya up against the cage and just losing rounds and rounds and rounds because there's no progression. There's no sort of thought process. It's that one initial, okay, I'm going to go for this. Oh, I'm in on double leg, and then does nothing else with it. So yeah, I just think Whittaker decision is the way to go in this one. Next up is a fight. I've got no action on it. I don't think you do either. It is another European fighter, well, another Italian fighter actually, Alessio de Chirico, taking on Roman Kopylov. Bit of a random fight to throw in the mix there, really, but this Chirico's had some good moments, of course. probably the highlight of his entire career is that insane head kick against Joaquin Buckley, that came immediately after Buckley himself landing the one of the probably KOs of all time against Impa Kasanganay. But then then Chirico goes out there, head kick KO loss to Abdul Razak Al Hassan. And that's the fight he's coming off now against Kopylov, who, he hasn't shown a huge. Well, I mean, he hasn't. Yeah, he's without a win in the UFC right now. Submission loss and a decision loss to Carl Robertson and Albert Duraev, respectively. I imagine Chirico will win this, but it's not a fight that I particularly taped, and it's not one I have a huge amount of interest in all honesty. Any thoughts about this one?
I share the same sentiment as you. You know, it wasn't a fight I looked in too much. It almost seems like, if Kopylov were to lose here, he's looking at getting cut from the roster. Yeah. Like you say, MMA's weird. Chirico, nice head kick of his own, and then he's on the receiving end of one, that's MMA for you. But other than that, the only real thing that I thought about this fight was potentially there were some other fights on the card that could have taken its position on the main card. Imavov Buckley's one that springs to mind. I think that'll be a fantastic fight. But no action from me on this one.
I was so shocked when I saw that Imavov Buckley was on the prelims, especially considering, obviously Buckley's got the amazing KO finish, and Imavov is literally a training partner of Ciryl Gane. Surely you want to get that MMA Factory push as much as you can, but yeah, it's a strange one. Strange, yeah. There's so many fights that could be higher up than it, but you know what? Maybe Chirico goes out there and picks up another amazing KO finish. Maybe Kopylov does something special, but yeah, it's one or what. Let's be honest. This is gonna be the one that you sort of go for a toilet break in. You go pour yourself another drink or something and get ready for that co-main event. Prior to that fight is another. It's another one. The next two fights, I don't have a huge amount of interest in all honesty, so I don't mind sort of flying over them a little bit. We do have Nasrat Haqparast versus John Makdessi, which I think will provide an interesting fight. If not, I just feel like I don't have a read on it at all. Haqparast sort of came into the UFC as a big prospect, and you get all the memes of him being like a mini version of Kelvin Gastelum and whatnot. But now he's coming off back-to-back losses where against Dan Hooker and Bobby Green, where I don't think he won a single round in both fights. Both fights went to decision, and he was just beat from pillar to post. So will he bounce back against Makdessi? Makdessi, not as young as he once was, though he is a tricky fighter who can pick up wins against young prospects. I mean, he showed that with Ignacio Bahamondes last fight as well. So I really just don't have a read on it, because whereas Haqparast mentally after losing two fights so definitively, whereas Makdessi physically, how old is he now? Yeah, 37 years old. I mean, that is, that's a veteran fighter in a welterweight division where, at that point people's durability often tends to fall off quite a lot. So I would probably lean Haqparast just because I think he's got a power advantage, and just in terms of just pure physicality, I think he has the edge. But yeah, no real strong lean either side to it.
No, I'm the same as you. The only things I kind of looked at, which you touched on, is Makdessi's age. How much damage has he accumulated along his career by now? Haqparast being the much younger fighter, that plays into his favour, I think. But it's not a fight I was willing to put that much money on, that's for sure. I'd maybe take a small shot on Haqparast's decision. I think it's going to be a fan-friendly fight. I don't think either of these men are going to be shooting for takedowns. I think all 15 minutes are going to be on the feet and they're going to throw. And, as a spectator, that's kind of what we love to see. But in terms of, putting money or any bets, nothing really stuck out to me.
Yeah, it's a hard one to run anything on. Next up is another fight that I'm actually dead interested to watch this one, but I don't have a definitive read. Once again, we have William Gomis, maybe, I'm not sure, taking on Jarno Errens. Now, this is a European versus European fight. We've got a Frenchman in Gomis, who's making his UFC debut, taking on a Dutchman in Errens, who's also making his debut. I know there's quite a lot of hype behind William Gomis. No. Yeah, it's got wins on UA Warriors and Ares FC, which are both sort of relatively prestigious promotions. He also has a win over Tobias Harilla and Cage Warriors, which I've only just clocked now. So that's actually really quite excited me because I rate Harilla quite highly, and he's done some great things with Cage Warriors. So yeah, it's one that I'm going to watch and like take note of the future sort of thing. Both these guys have been labeled as prospects. Sean Bitter, is that the name? He the guy who does a lot of prospect watching on Twitter, especially, sort of label both these guys as big future prospects for the division, for the featherweight division. So yeah, it's one to watch. It's an interesting one, but I can't really lay chalk on either man with considering they're both debutants. So yeah, let's just see how they do in the big leagues. Your thoughts?
Again, I'm with you on that. I'm more just excited to see these two make their debuts. There's a lot of talk, there's a lot of hype surrounding both of them. But I'm in a similar position as you. I'm not confident to lay that much money on either fighter because I just don't know how they're going to fare in the UFC. Is the debut going to affect one or both of their performances? I think it'll be a really entertaining fight, and I think fans are in for a treat. But like you said, this fight maybe is more to gather information for later on down the line when you can get a better read on both parties.
Definitely. Next fight is one I do have action on. Charles Air Jourdain, Canada's own, taking on Nathaniel Wood. Nathaniel the Prospect Wood. Both men coming off relatively short notice fights. Wood picked up one of the most sort of definitively dominant performances of his career at UFC London. I think that second London card of the year was a little bit of a letdown in some ways, a lot of sort of lay and pray and whatnot. But Nathaniel Wood is one of the guys who stood out to me on that card. I thought he was absolutely sensational, making his featherweight debut, move up to featherweight, where he absolutely just beat Charles Rosa from pillar to post. I really thought he looked sensational in that fight. And he took on Charles Jourdain, who Jourdain has become a sort of fan favorite, sort of cult hero sort of thing within the MMA community. You've got like the moments such as the sort of Sparta-esque front kick against Andre Ewell, the guillotine choke against Venata when Venata's trousers half get pulled down in the process, and just moments like that I think fans have really sort of latched onto and people like him, people want to watch him. Like I said, I've got a side in this. Can I ask who you're backing in this one first?
Well, I stayed away from this fight.
Okay.
I did a bit of tape research, but in reality, you hit the nail on. I love both fighters. Charles Jourdain for me, he's entertaining, and like I said, Nathaniel Wood's performance at UFC London was just phenomenal. If I were to bet with my heart, I'd be going Nathaniel Wood because he's an Englishman and you've got to support your fellow countrymen. But I don't know how the move up to featherweight is going to affect him. Obviously, cutting less weight, that's going to help for sure. I think Jourdain's got maybe 3 inches in him in height. I haven't really looked into reach, probably should have, but it's a difficult one to call. I would like to say Nathaniel Wood will get it done, but I couldn't confidently tell you because although Charles Jourdain is perceived more as a fan favourite, I do think technically his abilities are very good too, and I think we're just in for an entertaining fight.
Just looking now at reach, Topology has them both listed as the exact same, 175 centimeters. So
that makes me more inclined to bet Nathaniel Wood now, doesn't it? So
I must confess I have taken Nathaniel Wood in this fight. I think fighters like Charles Jourdain, I think he's good. He's a great action fighter and he's always great fun to watch. But when you have this sort of cult hero status, people start looking at the actual skill level quite as much as maybe they should do. And I think that's maybe sort of reflected by a betting line, especially considering Wood is an underdog in this fight. It's a plus 125 dog. Yeah, I hit that quite early, to be honest, because I just thought, I think Wood's going to be faster than him. I thought he's got a more diverse skill set. I think maybe on the feet, it's I wouldn't say they're sort of equally good, but they both have pockets of their game that sort of level out the other. I think the sort of dynamic striking of Jourdain is excellent, but the more sort of basic nuts and bolts approach that Wood has might even be able to cancel that out, especially with the sort of the leg kicks that he's added to his game as of late as well. And then I also think Nathaniel Wood has a big edge in the grappling department, even though it's something that he doesn't show as much. I think he has that in his back pocket. And if the fight on the feet starts to go Jourdain's way, we saw how dangerous he can be against Burgos when he started opening up with those flurries. I think Wood has the ability to take the fight to the ground, start landing that ground and pound, and even start hunting for submissions. So, yeah, I think the line is wrong. I think Wood should be a favorite. I'm guessing maybe it's because Jourdain's the bigger fighter, like you said, but he also has that sort of status that I think has inflated his the perception of his skill level. So yeah, back in Nathaniel Wood, and I'm half tempted to take a stab at Wood by decision as well, which is currently listed at plus 260. Not certain about that one, but definitely Wood to win, money line, plus 125. Yeah, all over that.
I'll be very honest. After hearing every single point you made when we jump off this, I'm going to be placing some money on Nathaniel Wood. You made an excellent point with, the grappling advantage is definitely in Wood's favour. The reach being the same, for some reason I had it in my head that Charles Jourdain was going to have a massive reach advantage over him. And if he doesn't, then that reassures me quite a lot. Again, you made a good point. That, I rate Jourdain, I think fundamentally he's got some sound skill sets, but Nathaniel Wood is exactly the same, if not, he's progressing and he's getting better and better every time we see him. I like the Nathaniel Wood by decision. I'm not sure he could well finish Jourdain. If he does, I think it would be late.
Yeah,
but
maybe
if he's already
over 2.5 rounds, something like that. Maybe potentially. I'm just looking at lines now. But yeah, go on. Sorry, I interrupted you.
I'm thinking if you can get Nathaniel Wood at plus money already, play it safe with the money line, and I think he'll serve you well.
Yeah, I agree. That is the main card rounded off. Not bad main card in all honesty, and that Jourdain versus Wood fight to sort of kick things off. It is that's a great sort of start. Looking at a few different sites, they've sort of got the prelims listed in different ways, but I'm thinking it's surely Imavov versus Buckley is going to be the feature prelim. But then Tapology have got Stoltzfus versus Magomedov, so I'm not certain. But regardless, I don't have a read on Dustin Stoltzfus versus Abusupiyan Magomedov, so we can brush over that one quickly unless you have anything to say on it.
No, I'm the same as you. I think, and without sounding disrespectful, I think I'm just not that high on Stoltzfus for some reason. But then again, it's not something I'm that confident to lay money against him. It's a bit of a strange fight for me, if I'm honest. It's not something I was willing to bet on, that's for sure.
Yeah, well, yeah, Magomedov's the KSW guy who's making his debut. I need to see these sort of guys in the UFC, unless I've extensively followed their career outside the promotion. And someone who I have been doing that with is Michael Figlak, who takes on Firas Ziam. Ziam is one of the French lads on the card, so obviously you'll have that home crowd pop. But Mike Figlak is someone I'm a huge fan of. 8-0, undefeated, is making his UFC debut. And yeah, he looked sensational during his Cage Warriors run. If you follow Cage Warriors, you'll probably recognize some of these names that he's got wins on. Oban Elliott just beat former champion Matt Bonner recently. Agistari, a former lightweight champion as well. That was the win he most recently got. And then he was essentially, it almost seemed promised that Figlak would fight for the Cage Warriors lightweight title against George Hardwick next. They did face-offs and all sorts, but then suddenly, with I think it was maybe just a month to go, it's announced that Figlak is signed for the UFC and taking on Firas Ziam, who I think was cut from the promotion, right? And then
Yeah, he was. You are right on that.
but then immediately re-signed. Like no regional fights in between. He lost to Terence McKinney in the first round, was cut from the promotion, and then they were like, "Oh, wait, we're going to France. Let's re-sign him." But yeah, I've got Figlak in a parlay. He's currently minus 200 right now, so that's not a line I'm gonna throw a huge amount of money on, just because it's always a step up to the big leagues. It can have a sort of effect on someone. But I think he's a very well-rounded prospect. Firas Ziam's a good striker, but we're getting like a recurring theme now of French point strikers, because I think he's very similar to Gane in that way, in that he doesn't really knock people out. He's quite long, he's rangy, and he will jab. Try to pick up rounds, but I feel like the division that he's in, that just doesn't work at a particularly high level anymore. Whereas Figlak, I think, he's coming in with something to prove, and he's just tore through every opponent he's had to face so far. So yeah, I have Figlak parlayed with the fighter we're about to talk about after this one. Do you have a read in this fight aside?
It sounds like we have, set our bets up to mirror each other, because I like you, I am high on Figlak. You pointed to his well-roundedness. I completely agree. Was a strange one, like you say. It was only it felt like it was a bit swept under the rug that he'd signed, and then before we knew it, he was announced to be facing Ziam on this card. I took a stab on Figlak by decision, although Ziam, like you say, he's got range. He's a bit more of a point striker. I think he's got a handful of KOs and things like that, a handful of submissions. So there is potential there for him to counter, take into the fact it's Figlak's debut. How does he deal with the pressure of that? I just think he's a well-developed fighter already for 8-0 as a professional. His performances in Cage Warriors reflect that. And yeah, I think he's not going to be reserved, but I think he'll go with a measured game plan and approach, just to ensure that stay disciplined and get the victory in your first fight out. So like I said, Figlak by decision.
I think that's a great shout, to be honest, because Ziam is he's very good at not getting knocked out unless you're fighting someone like Terence McKinney, and McKinney's just a finishing machine. Figlak, you can get plus money as by decision, so yeah, I might jump on that line later. And just a note on what you said, he does have some KOs and whatnot earlier on in his career, but if you look at these fights, they're against like 12-10 opponents, 8-6, 1-1, 3-1. These, as soon as he comes to the UFC, it's suddenly just only decisions. So fight to go the distance, Figlak to win by decision. I think that's a good line to take. Okay. I'm following Tapology, so now they've got listed Nassourdine Imavov versus Joaquin Buckley. Cracking fight, really, really good fight. This is like one of the standout fights on this card for me. Buckley, we all know him for the incredible KO of Kasanganai, like I mentioned earlier. He's, as of late, got this I don't know, a sort of cult status about him as well. He's linked up with Dale Brown of Detroit Urban Survival, something like that, isn't it? But he also seems like he's actually leveling up as a fighter. He's getting better and better. Currently riding a 3-fight winning streak. Wins over Antonio Arroyo, Abdul Razak Al Hassan, which is another bizarre one when you think about Chirico head kicking him and then getting knocked out by Al Hassan and then going out and losing to Buckley. Just bizarre. And then he also beat Albert Duraev as well. Was Duraev the last person to beat Kopylov as well? Some weird links.
I hope not. This would be too strange.
a nice 3-fight winning streak. He is starting to put things together. But he's taking on Imavov, who I think is probably one of the biggest prospects in the division. Back-to-back wins over Ian Heinisch and Edmund Shabazian, who were both sort of considered, potential next big things at middleweight. And prior to that, he lost a majority decision to Phil Hawes, which he almost definitely won, let's be honest. And he also has a win over Jordan Williams. Imavov, exceptional wrestling, very good sort of Thai style striking as well. I am backing him. He's the parlay piece that I'm mixing it with Figlak. I got that at I think it was like plus 120 or something. Yeah, I think he can go out there. I think he can. I think he can pretty much beat Buckley in every aspect of the game. But I also think Buckley might be able to just land a knockout punch and finish him. So it's not my most confident pick, but I do think he is the better fighter.
I completely agree with your reasoning for your pick. However, I've done the opposite. I am going for the Joaquin Buckley wonder KO that he just pulls out because he is, he's an athlete. He is ginormous. Looking into it, you made a point of Imavov's wrestling, which I agree with. Buckley holds 64% takedown defense, I believe it is. So I'm having some confidence in that. Imavov's Thai style striking, very good again. I am wishing on a miracle, shooting for a star, if you will, that in the mix-up of those two, that Buckley's going to connect and put Imavov's lights out. Not that I particularly want to see that because, again, I like Imavov and I think he's got a lot of potential. But Joaquin Buckley won at plus money already, and his KO being plus money even further. I could not take a small chance on it.
Yeah, no, I mean, like, in a way, it's almost similar again to the main event with if you're going to back Buckley, yeah, I think backing him by KO is probably the way to go. And yeah, I mean, I was the way I was breaking down this fight is a lot of it was just sort of pro Imavov because that's the line I'm taking. But I mean, yeah, there's a lot of stuff to be said about Buckley in that he maybe is the superior athlete, maybe not the superior martial artist, but he is one of those just sort of freak athletes. And you do see guys who can just bounce back up from takedowns, and he kind of has that sort of like, not always technique, but he just has the physical the strength, just natural ability to just jump back up. And if he does start to let loose those hands, Imavov might be in trouble. So I understand the take. I just couldn't quite bring myself to back Buckley against such a high level opponent, because in my mind Imavov should be in the sort of top 10 of the division. So I'm confident in my pick.
That's good, you should be.
So next up we have Benoit Saint Denis. He is taking another Frenchman. He's taking on Brazil's Gabriel Miranda. I am not familiar with Miranda at all. This is his UFC debut. I think maybe he's stepping in on short notice. Yes. Denis is initially scheduled to fight Christos Giagos. I know a lot of people are backing Saint Denis in this fight. I haven't got a side, but what we have seen from him, I can sort of break down in that he is probably another of the most durable fighters in the UFC. Everyone, of course, knows him from that the Zaleski dos Santos fight, in which he refused to get knocked out. The referee, of course, got a lot of stick in that fight, but he stood in there with one of the hardest hitting fighters in the division, and despite the fact that he was clearly outclassed, just refused to go down. And then he came back and beat Nicholas Stoltzfus afterwards with a rear naked choke. So I think he's a decent fighter, and if he can sort of, rather than being thrown in with someone like Zaleski dos Santos, if you can, sort of fight people closer to his level, to a level that you should be starting at when you sign with the UFC, he could be a half decent fighter. Again, I haven't done tape on Gabriel Miranda, but from what I've heard, he's not the biggest sort of high potential prospect around. A lot of sort of, he hasn't fought the biggest amount, like highest level opposition. Also, he's been fighting quite sporadically as well. If you look down his record right now, he did fight twice in 2021, but then prior to that, 2019, only once 2019. Yeah, it's sort of quite sporadic the way he's fought. So yeah, I mean, I would definitely lead towards Saint-Denis, but I don't have any money on it. What about yourself?
I'm the same as you. There wasn't much I could find on Miranda. If you go look at his shadow, his Tapology page, he is clearly very well versed when it comes to submissions. 15 of the 16 wins coming by submission. But Benoit Saint-Denis hasn't ever lost by submission. Level of competition, something to take into account. We don't know how good Miranda would do on this level. I saw something doing the rumour mill on Twitter. Maybe I might get this wrong, so correct me if I do. That Saint-Denis had a wedding scheduled for the upcoming weeks or something in an interview.
I'm not sure.
I'll double check and I'll clarify on. We'll make sure we clarify on the low kick page, that's for sure. So he originally didn't want to fight on this card, and he wanted to fight in a later date. And given that, and not knowing what Miranda's actual true potential was, I avoided the fight because it's just not something I could put my money or my trust into.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I haven't really got anything more to say. But apart from, good spot for Saint-Denis to get a win in front of the French fans and, sort of start to build himself a fan base. Next, we'll look at the second to first fight on the card. Khalid Taha taking on Cristian Quinones. Yeah, I mean, I'll be straight now. I haven't got any action on the rest of the card, so I haven't got a huge amount to say. Khalid Taha is a strange one because, in a way, I sort of viewed him somewhat similar to Nasrat Haqparast when he first signed to the UFC as a sort of like prospect who really could blow up, and then he's gone and dropped back-to-back decision losses to Barcelos and Morozov, who are both actually quite good fighters in their own respect, but he got dominated in both fights. And in fact, he only has one win in the UFC, and that was a KO win over Boston Salmon, who was one of the most sort of fragile glass chin fighter in the promotion. And prior to that, apart from that, he hasn't got a single win. So he hasn't got a huge amount of time in the UFC where he can be like, oh yeah, I was winning through all that time, all that period. So what's his confidence level like? I don't know. He's probably going to get cut if he loses this fight. He takes on Cristian Quinones, who I'm not certain, but think might be the younger brother of what's his name? Is it Jose Teca Quinones? He fought Sean O'Malley a while back, but it's been since cut from the UFC. He's one of the Contender Series guys who's made his way up. Currently riding a 4-fight winning streak. Picked up a win over Long Zhao on the Contender Series 2021. Yeah, I don't have a huge read on this fight either way. I think the betting line is very close. Taha -125, Quinones +100. Yeah, I don't have a particular read on how it's going to go. What about yourself?
I'm the same as you. I have, no bets left on the card. I had a little look into the fight, and nothing really took my fancy. Like you say, Taha loses here, he is probably out. The only thing, if I was looking at it from, a record statistical standpoint, which you never should do you take research because, numbers don't tell everything. Taha does have 9 of his 13 wins by knockout, so he does possess that power. Whether that transfers onto sort of this level of competition, we're still yet to see. Boston Salmon, he knocked out 25. Well, sorry, no, knocked out in the first round. But as you make the point, Boston Salmon, not the most durable of fighters we've ever had inside the UFC.
He's a good fighter. He's just really glass chinned. Yeah.
But yeah, that's just the downside of him. But not confident enough to place my money on either man.
And then opening up the whole card, we have Stephanie Egger taking on Aylin Perez, I believe the name is. Now, this is an interesting one. Egger got a lot of backlash after losing via submission to Myra Bueno Silva. This was a month ago, I believe. Oh yeah. So that was the whole like sort of phantom tap, where Bueno Silva locked up an armbar and then released it because it looked like Egger had tapped, and Egger started to protest. But it later became clear that Egger had tapped, and she was just trying to like, fool the judges. You never really want to see that sort of sportsmanship in the UFC. I guess she's just trying to like get straight back in there. She probably didn't take any injuries and get back in the fans' good graces, so to speak. Aylin Perez making a UFC debut. She hails from Argentina. Was initially scheduled to take on Zara Fenn, who I think is a French fighter. So that would have been another sort of one for the fans more than anything. I don't rate Egger particularly highly, and Perez, I know a lot of people are saying she might be live for like a KO finish in this one. Possesses a lot of power, as well as the sort of South American fighters quite often do. Egger's she's a judo girl, I think. Of course, she armbarred Jessica Rose Clark. So if she does the classic judo throw straight into an armbar, or starts posturing up and landing ground pound, maybe she'll win that way. Or maybe Perez will let her hands fly and knock Egger out. I feel like I keep saying this now, but I don't have a particularly strong read. What about yourself?
I mean, whatever you're saying, it seems like I'm mirroring at the moment because it's the exact same. I don't know. I normally really question, someone in Stephanie Egger's position having such a quick turnaround, but in this case, she didn't really take that much damage in her last fight against Bueno Silva. I do have to thank her because I got Bueno Silva at plus money in that fight, so that was always
Lovely.
nice.
I think I bet Egger.
But for getting sold by the hype is what I went on this fight, because I always like to have something on the opening fight just to spark my interest to get it go early. I am going with the majority on Aylin Perez. The potential for the KOs there. I'm not so worried about Egger's durability. I'm more worried about, say, mental state sort of thing. Not in that regard, but a loss only was at the start of August, and she's coming back less than a month. She has time to digest that and everything that came along with that. And if you can get Perez at plus money, it's worth a small play, I think.
Yeah, I mean, just looking at lines now, Perez is a big underdog, which I didn't think that. Well, she's a plus 200 underdog. So yeah, I mean, I'm not taking it, but if that's the sort of the side that you find yourself leaning to, plus 200, you can't go wrong with that. That's the whole card wrapped up now. This is a good first episode, I think. We're going to try and make this a weekly show now, breaking down. I think we're going to focus on the UFC. Some of our other guys on staff, Nikhil Sharma, who is, if you watch this YouTube channel, you know him from a lot of our videos, and Ollie Brockett as well, who has done a few interviews as well in the past. Those two are going to start doing some Dana Contender Series content, whilst myself, Patrick, and Murdo Todd are going to do this sort of UFC betting preview show. Going to try to make it a weekly occurrence. So if you like watching this, drop us a like, try to share the content and whatnot, and let's try to really get the ball rolling. Thank you, Patrick, for coming on. Was a great first episode in my opinion.
No, thank you for having me. The only thing I will say is come next episode, I'll try and make sure we split our picks a bit more. I think we were 5 to 6 on the same. I think the only one different we had was Imavov Buckley, but that does give me some faith in a sense.
Exactly, makes me feel a bit better about it.
who takes a stab with us, if we win some money bonus, everyone's a winner that way.
Yeah, exactly. keep an eye out for this show dropping next week as well. Every week from now on. As long as there's UFC, we'll be here. So yeah, thank you for watching. And tune in next week.
Make sure to subscribe to the Low Kick MMA YouTube channel for all the latest news, event previews, and interviews with some of the biggest stars in MMA.